Welcome to the ATP Report with your host, Barry Nussbaum. I'm Brannon Howse. Thanks for joining us. Well, this is a very important broadcast because this week President Donald Trump held a press conference live from the White House with the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, and announced a peace plan in Israel. And yet, while we are now filming, just seconds ago before we began broadcasting, we have breaking news out of Israel. Joining us to tell us about all this and give his analysis is the host of the program, Barry Nussbaum of AmericanTruthProject.org. Barry, this is a very important broadcast. You've been spending a lot of time researching and preparing for this. What's going on? What's the latest breaking news out of Israel just moments before we began this program?
Well, Brannon, as I just mentioned to you before we went live on the air, while you and I were discussing the show tonight and the implications of the peace plan for not only the Israelis, the Palestinians, and the surrounding countries, our wonderful daughter texted me, Abba, which is Hebrew for father. I'm in a bomb shelter in southern Israel. The red alert just went off, and we can hear missiles exploding from inside the shelter. In other words, the Palestinian terrorists in Gaza are lobbing missiles into residential neighborhoods in southern Israel again to protest the peace plan. And my daughter is in the middle of it. And that missile barrage is affecting my family. Thankfully, she's fine.
Well, of course, I don't know, has the all clear been given yet?
On this missile attack, yes. I have a text alert system that comes from Israel and tells me when the all clear is given. The missile barrage, at least for now, is over. However, she's still down there celebrating the Sabbath.
Well, we'll be thinking and praying for her and all the residents of that neighborhood and Israel. Barry, let's talk about this peace plan. It's been one that has been long in coming, and many people have been involved. There have been a lot of us that were skeptical as to what this would look like, and we were hoping that Israel would not once again be asked that in order to have peace, P-E-A-C-E, that they give up more P-I-E-C-S, pieces of their land. Right. And because that seems like that's what it's all about, because we know the other side in many regards isn't about peace, P-E-A-C-E, but more pieces of land until there is no such thing really as Israel. And it seems like every time we turn around, Israel's giving more, compromising, giving away more. And what do they get in return? More rockets, more rockets, more rockets. Well, here we are. You just announced breaking news, rockets flying after this peace deal has been announced. So clearly we know what some of them think. What are your thoughts? Do you think this plan is good for Israel? Is it a good deal for the Palestinians, or is it a bad deal for Israel, good deal for the Palestinians, bad deal for the Palestinians, good deal for Israel? What are your thoughts? Who comes out ahead on this deal, and who comes out behind, or is it an equal, fair deal?
That is such a monster huge question, and I can answer it very succinctly. It depends on whether the Palestinians can convince their people to lay down the rockets, grenades, knives, kite bombs, and so on. In other words, this plan, for the first time, gives Palestinians complete control over their territory to be governed by them. However, there are preconditions for the first time since 1948 with the founding of the State of Israel, which we can go through, and we will in a few minutes in detail. But basically, they have to stop being terrorists, or there is no money that's going to change hands. Trump has offered a stupendous, and I mean that literally, a stupendous amount of money to the Palestinians to build a country, to build an economy, to build international trade. But the terror must stop. Bless President Trump for saying peace, meaning P-I-E-C-E, of land comes with and only after P-E-A-C-E, Brannon, as you have so, well, intelligently pointed out. You can't have one without the other. Israel has been doing nothing but giving up land and control since 1948 and has gotten no peace in return for giving up a tremendous amount of land.
Well, what does the rocket fire now tell you?
Well, what it tells us, quite frankly, at least on the front end, is it's a big go away, and I'm saying the nice words for the two words that end in you. The leader of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, has called Donald Trump every possible vile name in Arabic he could call him since the peace plan was announced.
So where does it go from here?
Well, let's talk about the plan, because without a good plan, there's no sense in even continuing the dialogue. So here's what Trump offers Israel first: immediate recognition of Israeli sovereignty over the Jordan Valley and the Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria. In other words, that's where the Israelis are living now. These are the ancient lands of Israel. You noticed I said Judea. That's where the word Jew comes from. These are the ancient biblical lands of Israel from the Bible. Somehow, because they were conquered originally from the Israeli position by the Jordanian army after the War of Independence, and Jordan held on to it, it's now been considered by some as occupied territory. It's not. It's liberated territory. And the Israelis have been building settlements there since 1967. So the first part of the peace plan acknowledges that. Here's one of the key ones. Part two is Israeli military and security control continues west of the Jordan River. That's important because in areas patrolled by the Israelis, there is no terror. In the areas controlled by the Palestinians, there's almost unrelenting terror. Step three, the right of return of the Palestinians goes away. Now, what this means is, in world history, there's always the opportunity to go back to where you were driven out of immediately after the cessation of violence. Well, a whole lot of Palestinians, hundreds of thousands, left in 1948, expecting to come back and occupy, well, Haifa and Tel Aviv, because they were told by their leaders that all the Jews would be dead. They never came back. They've been in refugee camps since 1948, and now their hundreds of thousands have grown into millions. They can't come back. Next step, Jerusalem is the undivided capital of Israel, as Trump has already acknowledged. The next step, BDS must stop. It must stop. The Arab nations have already said they will support it. The Palestinians have said not. The next one, Palestinian Arabs will stop all claims against Israel in international courts. They're constantly lobbying legal challenges against Israel. That will stop. So that's what Israel gets. Here is what Trump has said the Palestinians must do in exchange. Number one, they must recognize Israel as the national home of the Jewish people. Seems kind of obvious. The rest of the world recognizes that. The Palestinians haven't. Number two, here's a real obvious one, Brannon. They must cease incitement against Israel and all Jews in their textbooks, media, public statements, television. The Palestinian television is the most horrific Nazi-like stuff you've ever seen, where Sesame Street characters who are being produced in shows in Arabic for Palestinian children are taught to kill the Jews, starting for 2-year-olds. And they're taught that in school, and it's in the textbooks. That's got to stop. Number three, Hamas and the other terror groups must disarm and give up terrorism. All violence must stop. Here's a key one. And pay for slay must end. You and I have talked about this in previous shows, Brannon. The Palestinians are paying out over $100 million a year to the families of Palestinians who have either tried to kill Jews or have killed Jews. The best paying job in the West Bank is to blow up a Jew. And if you live and you go to prison, you make more than the people in government. And if you die, your family gets rich and your children grow up rich and they buy you a new house. It seems, well, kind of insane, but they must stop it. And if that all happens, I will tell you what the Palestinians will get. You ready?
Ready.
They will get a state which includes almost all of the West Bank, all of Gaza, and Israel will give them land in the Negev along the Egyptian border for manufacturing centers, trade, and so on. In other words, no Palestinians move, and they get extra land to make up for the Jewish settlements. Number two, they get their capital in Jerusalem, which is what they've said they've wanted all along, and the United States will recognize that and build an embassy there. Number three, here's a wild one, which I've researched it, and it seems possible. There's all this talk about the fact you can't have a country, Palestine, where Gaza and the West Bank are separated. There will be tunnels, bridges, and roads to connect the two territories. And engineers around the world have said, yes, it's absolutely possible. It could be done in a few years. Here's the big news. 50 billion, that's billion with a B, will be given in economic development funds to create factories, jobs, farming, high-tech, tourism, hotels, ports, etc. They will create an economic powerhouse within a couple of years. Massive employment, where now there's massive unemployment. No more refugee camps, all citizenship for all Palestinians. And what happens? You have two countries next to each other, economically viable and politically viable.
And the 50 billion comes from where?
My understanding is there are a great number of Arab oil countries willing to contribute, along with the EU, along with the United States. Now, all of these countries have had it with the Palestinians. They've been dumping in hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and the Palestinians have never been worse off because their government has been ripping them off nonstop. So there's a timetable on this plan, Brannon. The Palestinians have 4 years to put it all together, or statehood goes away permanently. And during that period, no new communities, no expansion of the communities, no changes on the map. And what would happen is you literally have a peace plan that starts now. But here's the problem. As you pointed out when we started, the immediate response from the Palestinians is no, no, no. This plan says no more intifadas, no more terrorism, no more incitement to violence, no more balloons with bombs, no soccer balls filled with grenades, and so on. Unfortunately, it's just the opposite. The Palestinians today are calling for violence, today launching missiles into Israel, and today, this evening in Israel, my daughter's in a bomb shelter because the Palestinians have rewarded Donald Trump's 2 years of working on this plan with more indiscriminate targeting of residential communities, hoping to kill Israelis.
Now, you said something that will probably shock people. It's very interesting. You said the new Palestinian state that will be created alongside the Israeli state, and then all this money and factories and farming and technology and court systems and buildings and all kinds of things, infrastructure. They should have these two communities living side by side, both enjoying prosperity. You said that they will be recognized as having their capital in Jerusalem, which is also obviously the capital of Israel. So they both will have Jerusalem recognized as their capital.
Yeah, the area they're looking at is East Jerusalem, which is an Arab area anyway. So it would work out perfectly. The problem is, as I've talked about for years, there is this idea in Islam, in the Middle East at least, and several members of Congress, that believe that Jerusalem must be free of the Jews and free of the Christians because we are defiling Muslim land, which is absurd in the extreme. And there are those within Islam, especially the radical Shia in Iran, that believe through their Quds force, which is the Jerusalem force, that Jerusalem must be liberated and wiped clean of the defiling non-believers, which is you guys and us guys. And unless the Palestinians can let go of that radical apocalyptic thought, there will never be a capital in East Jerusalem for the United States to put an embassy in representing the United States. And so that is a philosophical change. The Arab countries, the moderate Arab states, are in support of it. They're willing to support Israel. They're willing to support the Palestinian new state. They're willing to dump in the money. The Palestinians have got to get off the dime, and that means give up violence.
Now, you said this has a 4-year timetable on it. Tell me more about that.
Well, that hasn't been fleshed out that much. It must be fully implemented and rolling along, or it's going to go away. In other words, there have been peace plans every couple of years since 1948, and in all of those cases, Brannon, the Palestinians weren't obligated to do anything other than take land that they will control. There's an interesting quote out of a journalist, Amit Segal in Israel, who said, "Until today, Israel gave away territory and received words in return. From today, it will receive territory and give words." Meaning, there's going to be a quid pro quo. There must be peace, or you don't get a country, and you've got to start now.
So, obviously, Hamas would have to sign this deal. Is there any plans for a signing ceremony?
When you call the other side horrible names in English and Arabic, and you call for violence, and you call for the death of the President of the United States, I'm thinking maybe that's not the best way to show your gratitude. Now, here's what's really curious. Here are the countries that have already signed on to the plan: Saudi Arabia, Oman, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Egypt, United Kingdom, Austria, Yemen, Australia, India, France, Italy, plus every major Jewish organization in the United States: Republican Jewish Coalition, Zionist Organization of America, AIPAC, Conference of Presidents of American Jewish Organizations, B'nai B'rith, American Jewish Congress, Christians United for Israel, American Jewish Committee, and so on. So there's this outpouring of support for what Trump has done. You want to guess, my conservative friend, who has come out against it in the United States?
Who's that?
All your favorite candidates: Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ayanna Pressley, and the favorite We Hate Israel groups: J Street, New Israel Fund, Jewish Voice for Peace, If Not Now, and of course, all of our favorite terrorists: Hezbollah, Hamas, Fatah, Palestinian Authority, and the United Nations Secretary General. And then you can add Iran and Turkey on top of that. So it's the usual people that hate Israel, both inside and outside the United States, that are against it. And some very, very influential players, Brannon, are in favor and willing to open up their checkbooks.
How on earth can the media continue to regurgitate the propaganda of these groups that you mentioned that are opposed to it, and continue the false narrative and the propaganda and the brainwashing and the lies and the anti-Semitism that is rooted in their message that Israel is an apartheid state, it's a racist state, they're involved in genocide. I mean, they have just been given a deal that is absolutely amazing, and yet if they turn it down, which apparently they've just said that's what they're doing with the rockets that are flying, moments before we went on the air with your daughter texting you she's in a bunker, if they give this up, I don't understand again how the American people can't see and the world can't see that there is no truth to these lies about Israel. They are not an apartheid state. They are not a racist state. They are not involved in a violation of human rights. They are offering the deal of the world to the Palestinians. Do you think this will help the cause of the Jews, of Israel, for people to see the truth about them? Or do you think the media, CNN, MSNBC, all the hate groups around the world will continue their lies, and the noise of their lies will overshadow the truth of this deal that reveals the actual compassion and fairness and justice that the Jews are willing to offer?
Well, you know the old adage, the truth shall set you free. I just don't know what the timetable is for that. It's an interesting question, Brannon, but the corollary to the question is you have a president right now, Donald Trump, who has gotten more involved in helping Israel than every single president since 1948, probably combined. This is a guy that moved the embassy to Jerusalem. This is a guy that recognized the annexation of the Golan Heights. This is the guy that's approving West Bank settlements and huge military, economic, scientific cooperation with the country of Israel. His daughter is not just Jewish, but Orthodox. His grandchildren are being raised in a Jewish home. He celebrates Jewish holidays with his family. And yet, CNN says he's an anti-Semite and a bigot.
Yep.
So when the truth doesn't matter, I guess you can say whatever you want. And if you control the microphone, the only question is anybody still listening? The good news is you had a guy running for prime minister in Great Britain, Jeremy Corbyn, whose favorite people in the world are Black September and Hamas and Hezbollah and so on. In other words, Islamic jihadis, those are the people he loves. And he made it very clear he was going to destroy any relationship between Great Britain and Israel if he won. And he got beat in a landslide by Boris Johnson.
Well, we're thankful for that. Thankful for that.
No kidding. No kidding. I'm hopeful the same sort of sanity continues here. Because sadly for Israel, should Donald Trump lose in November 2020, every major political candidate, starting with the leader as of today in the polls, I know it sounds weird to say it out loud, Bernie Sanders, would come out against Israel. Even though he was born Jewish, he's not a Jew, and he's got something up his wherever that he just doesn't like Israel and has made it part of his platform. Ergo, he has anti-Semites out on the campaign trail as his surrogates. So for the sake of Israel, let's hope the policies of Donald Trump continue past November 2020. And at some point, when the impeachment saga ends, Trump can go out and sell this peace plan. Because right now, it's impeachment, 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 impeachment.
That's the voice and the picture of Barry Nussbaum. He's with American Truth Project. His website is americantruthproject.org, as you've been seeing on the screen under his name, americantruthproject.org. If you would like to join his text alert list, we have a text alert list. He has a text alert list. We advise that he go with the company we use because we've gotten great results from it. And so if you'd like to join his text alert list, then all you got to do is simply text the word truth to 88202. Just simply text the word TRUTH to 88202, and you'll be getting the newsletter of the American Truth Project. Now, at any time you want to stop that, all you got to do is text back the word stop and it'll stop. They also, like us, don't let out their text alert list to anybody else. So when you get a text alert, you know it's coming from Barry Nussbaum, your host of this broadcast, that we are pleased to produce and film from our studio here in Memphis, Tennessee, to his studio where he is. And so again, just simply text WVW, no, that's mine. Text TRUTH to 88202. Text TRUTH to 88202. All right, now, Barry, let's talk about Jared Kushner. Now, the media wants to mock him because he said he read 25 books on this, and so the Twitter and all this stuff started flying, mocking him with memes because he read 25 books. Well, you know what? I would like to know if any of these people mocking him, when was the last time they read 25 books? What were the last 25 books they read? How about what were the last 5 books they read? If you read 25 books on the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, you would have a pretty good understanding. Not to mention, he's been over there back and forth. He is, sounds like his family has been longtime friends with Benjamin Netanyahu. I've heard Benjamin Netanyahu make comments about having known Jared since he was, a child. So not only has he learned from being Jewish and traveling over there and being friends with Benjamin Netanyahu, meeting with the Israelis, meeting with the Palestinians, so great. He also spent some time doing some homework, and yet he's being mocked for this. But tell us about Jared Kushner. I don't agree with everything Jared's up to in every area, but tell me what Jared has been doing in this regard and what Jared's now saying with the lack of response from the Palestinians.
Well, I don't know him personally, although I do know some people that know him quite well. He's extremely bright, and he's worked very, very hard on the plan, along with our ambassador, our special envoy, along with the envoys from the Israelis, and they've been talking to not only the Palestinians, but every country in the Middle East. And they sold it ahead of time, largely Jared's work, Brannon. I mean, think about this. The key players, the key Sunni Arab states are all on board. In other words, these are the benefactors of the Palestinians who are saying, take the deal. It's great for you. So whether it came from Jared or Trump or anonymous sources, it's a fantastic offer to the Palestinians. But here's kind of a cautionary tale. We should not be surprised by the no, 1,000 times no speech that Mahmoud Abbas gave a few days ago. President of the Palestinian Authority, the guy elected for a 4-year term, 19 years ago. It's kind of the way, 15 years ago, it's the way they do things. You're the dictator for life until somebody shoots you. They don't have elections. The Palestinians were offered a state of their own in 1937, 1947, 2000, 2008, and 2014. And after the 1967 war, Israel went to the Arabs. Remember, there was no such thing as a Palestinian yet. It hadn't been invented. They were just Arab tribesmen that lived on the West Bank. And the Arab states got together in Khartoum and put out a press release late 1967 with the 3 no's. No, number 1, there will never be peace with Israel. Number 2, there will never be negotiation with Israel. Number 3, there will never be recognition of Israel. So it's Groundhog Day all over again for the Palestinians, but not for the Arab states. And this is the first time this is something different. So the Arabs that aren't in the West Bank are coming out saying, yeah, let's do it. Let's stop this. Let's all unite as Sunnis against Iran, who wants to conquer and kill us too.
Jared has said this. White House advisor Jared Kushner on Wednesday criticized the Palestinian Authority and Hamas leadership for calling for a day of rage in response to the presentation of U.S. President Donald Trump's deal of the century. They, the Palestinians, rejected the plan before they saw it, Kushner told CNN. Quote, they thought it wasn't going to be as good as it was, so I think they look quite foolish today. Also, one of the great ironies is they keep saying they want to be a state. If you're a state, you don't call for days of rage when you don't get what you want. So this is a real moment for them to show the world, are you ready to become a state or not? He also noted that the plan is, quote, a big opportunity for the Palestinians, and they have a perfect track record of blowing every opportunity they've had in their past. But perhaps maybe their leadership will read the details of it, stop posturing, and do what's best to try to make the Palestinians' lives better, end quote.
He's right. He's 100% right. The old euphemism, nice way to describe the Palestinians never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity.
Yeah. Listen to what
They're
Warren...
never going to get one better than this. I mean, it is a boatload of money. We joke about the money that Obama gave Iran, and we don't joke in a funny way. It enabled that country to go nuclear and go terrorist on a scale that nobody imagined. The Palestinians have the ability to create a wonderful place with trade and jobs and healthcare and education and a future for their children that doesn't mean making kite bombs out of soccer balls or sending bombs and missiles into schools and hospitals on the Sabbath. It would be a whole change, a whole sea change for the Middle East. Can you imagine if the Israeli-Palestinian question wasn't about a bus got blown up anymore, or people were cutting holes in the fence to kill mothers and their children on the highway? I've been on those roads. I've been to that fence. I've seen where the murders have taken place, where the blood is still dry in the streets from when it was running red. It's horrible. And this gives them the opportunity for their people to have a normal life.
But yet,
the question is, will they take the opportunity this time? According to Abbas, no, 1,000 times no. And he released that before he read it.
Well, listen to what Warren, presidential candidate Warren, has said. Quote, releasing a plan without negotiating with Palestinians isn't diplomacy. It's a sham. I oppose unilateral annexation in any form and reserve any policy that supports it, and reverse any policy that supports it, end quote. Joe Biden, quote, a peace plan requires two sides to come together. This is a political stunt that could spark unilateral moves to annex territory and set back peace even more, end quote. How about this one? He went on to say, quote, I've spent a lifetime working to advance the security and survival of a Jewish and democratic Israel. This is not the way, end quote. Mike Bloomberg, quote, every peace plan deserves a chance, but any viable plan requires buy-in from both sides, and over the past 3 years, the president has done nothing but hurt the U.S. and their position as an effective broker in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, end quote. He went on to say, quote, and this process, as this process unfolds, it is critical that neither party take unilateral steps that could trigger instability and violence, end quote. Pete Buttigieg says, quote, peace requires both parties at the table, not a political green light to the leader of one for unilateral annexation, end quote. Bernie Sanders, quote, he said this, quote, any acceptable peace deal must be consistent with the international law and multiple UN Security Council resolutions. It must end the Israeli occupation that began in 1967 and enable Palestinian self-determination in an independent, democratic, economically viable state of their own alongside a secure and democratic state of Israel, end quote. He said, quote, Trump's so-called peace deal doesn't come close and will only perpetuate the conflict and undermine the security interest of Americans, Israelis, and Palestinians. It is unacceptable, end quote. Well, reality is, from everything I've learned about the plan from you, it's exactly what Bernie Sanders says they should get. It sounds like they are, but he's either hasn't read the plan or is too stupid to know how great the deal is, or, as you've said, despite that he's Jewish, he's not really acting like a Jew should act, supporting the nation state of Israel.
Well, you know, if I was to listen to those quotes and hadn't read them before, and you didn't say who said what, isn't it interesting, Brannon, that it sounds like one long quote from one person? They have the same exact talking points, as if That is the Democrat platform, and I believe, pathetically, that it is. Let me address one thing that seems to be the theme throughout all of their commentary, which is Israel is annexing territory that's not theirs. Let me make something very, very clear. The modern state of Israel is a result initially of the Balfour Declaration by the British, who were running the area in the 1920s. And originally, Israel was going to get territory on both sides of the Jordan River. Then over time, as different plans floated around, the Jews' territory shrank. But in 1948, they were supposed to get everything from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. And then, when they declared their independence, after the state was acknowledged and founded, I guess you'd say, by international diplomacy at the United Nations, and minutes later, Harry Truman and other countries around the world, Russia and so on, recognized the country. Then it was the Soviet Union, of course. Israel was immediately invaded by Arab armies from every direction. At the end of the war, Jordan's army, trained and equipped by the British, occupied the area west of the Jordan River, all the way to the armistice line, which was called the Green Line. I've been on that line. It's an indefensible line that the Israelis have tried to erase since 1948. The Jordanians, after 1967, when they were driven back out of the territory by the Israelis, decided to say, well, the Israelis had occupied Jordanian territory. And that area became the Palestinian territory occupied by Arabs, Arab tribes from Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq, led by the lead Palestinian, Yasser Arafat, who was Egyptian and a terrorist trained in Moscow by the KGB.
Wow.
So when Israel drove them out of the West Bank, they were liberating their land, not conquering another people that had no right to it. So it's funny how the lie has persisted. So when the Jews went back in to build settlements, they weren't allowed to do that from 1948 to 1967 in what is commonly referred to as Judea and Samaria, the biblical land of Israel, from whence the name Jew comes from. That was looked at as occupation. So you still have these goofball Democrat candidates saying Israel is occupying this land and annexing foreign territory. It's a lie, Brannon.
Yep.
It's historically incorrect and should be disputed and challenged by anybody that knows history.
And on top of that, Barry, correct me if I'm wrong, the 1967 war with Egypt, Jordan decides to get in and start firing at the Israelis, and they told them a couple times, knock it off. We're busy dealing with the Egyptians. We don't want to deal with you Jordanians. Knock it off. The Jordanians did not knock it off, which then required Israel to respond, which is how they then ended up taking more of the capital, Jerusalem, which included the Temple Mount. Correct?
100% correct. And at that time, the war in 1967 was put together and urged by Egypt, who was 100% convinced they would destroy and kill every Jew. So they got Jordan and the older King Hussein, the father of the present king, to join in because they wanted to split the spoils with Jordan. Israel begged Jordan not to come into the fight, and if Jordan hadn't, they'd still be occupying Israeli territory on the West Bank. Because they came in, Israel defended itself and drove them out. That's how Israel got their territory back, the territory that they had been promised before 1948. But here's what's curious. The Trump peace plan says specifically no Arabs will be moved and no Jews will be moved. In other words, wherever you're living, you stay. And you'll be governed by your own government. So if you're living in an Arab village, you'll be administered, governed, and vote for a Palestinian government. And if you're in an Israeli town on the West Bank, you will vote for, be governed by, and deal with the Israeli government. So it recognizes the facts on the ground. Nobody's being dispossessed. Nobody's being moved. And there's going to be dump trucks of cash in the billions dumped on these people to build a future. It is an amazing offer. It is ridiculously generous. And the fact that it's being, as you said, rejected by every Democrat candidate, probably before they read it. It's 150 pages? They didn't have time to read it. They were sitting in the Senate impeachment hearings at the time for 17 hours a day. So they condemned it, reading the talking points into their press releases, probably written by the same staff member for all of them. That's why all the press releases sound the same, because it's the same talking points.
Yeah, I thought that same thing.
No, Trump is bad, therefore we reject him.
Yeah, I thought that same thing when I was reading it. It sounds like they all got their talking points from the same location, and I'm sure they did. Let me ask you this in closing. This is probably going to backfire on the Democrats with a lot of Democrat Jewish voters. I bet you Trump is going to be picking up quite a few Jewish voters who otherwise would have voted for a DNC candidate. And I know there'll still be the liberal ones that do that and betray their own heritage of the nation state of Israel. Why, I don't understand that fully. But I bet you there are some Jewish Democrats that are going to vote for Trump over this.
You know, it makes logical sense when you and I talk about it like that. It would seem that you would want to support a candidate, a political party, and a platform that supports your second homeland. I mean, that just seems logical. The basis of Judaism is a tie to the biblical land of Israel. It's in the Bible and has been there for 3,000 years. Don't you think that it would be difficult to say, hey, I'm a proud Jew, I'm a Zionist, but I don't want peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians because Bernie says it's bad, or Elizabeth says it's bad, or Pete says it's bad. These are all very left-wing progressives. They're socialists/communists, free countries with free trade and a burgeoning, explosive economy and freedom and so on. Doesn't seem to be a priority for those people. It doesn't seem even to be on their radar screen. Literally, they don't see freedom for others as important. And hopefully that will change. And like I said, when the impeachment insanity is over and it stops dominating 24/7 of the news cycle, at that point, I'm hopeful Saudi Arabia can come out and say, we like this. And a couple days later, Egypt can chime in, and Lebanon, and the United Arab Emirates, and Oman, and Russia, and the EU, and so on. Because those people support the plan, and they consider it highly generous. When you don't even get a pushback, or a counteroffer, or a let's talk, but you get, you lying SOB, may you rot in hell, you're a lying son of a dog, and on and on and on from the Palestinians, at least for now, the plan ain't going nowhere.
Wow. Well, folks, you see how important the American Truth Project broadcast is? I mean, where else are you hearing this? Okay? I haven't even heard this on Fox News. I'm not hearing this in many places. This is why it's absolutely vital we continue this broadcast with your host, Barry Nussbaum. Now, if you would like to join his text alert list, and why would you not, to get this kind of analysis, his articles, his updates. If you want to get that, just text the word truth, 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 to 88202. Just simply text the word truth to 88202. You have nothing to lose by joining. It's free to you. He pays for it. Cost him money to put it out. It's free to you. And you want to stop, anytime you just want to stop, just text back the word stop. So I urge you to join it. Text the word truth to 88202. Then also check out his website, AmericanTruthProject.org. AmericanTruthProject.org. Folks, we don't get paid to produce this show. We're not paid to do this. We're not doing this because Barry pays us to do this. We're doing this broadcast because we want to produce content that will inform you on the issues taking place in America and around the world that impact us as conservatives, as constitutionalists, as Christians, and as Jews, and as friends of the Jews. Because many of you are indeed Zionist. Many of you are Christian Zionist. And whether you're a Zionist or a Christian Zionist, or maybe you're saying, I don't even know what a Zionist is, but I know I want to support the Jews, well, then we hope you can learn more about what it means to be a Zionist or a Christian Zionist, which, by the way, those have now become pejoratives. That Howse, oh, he's a Zionist. He's a Christian Zionist. You can't believe the hate emails I get from these Jew haters coming down on me because I am a Christian Zionist, joined, by the way, by my Jewish Zionist friend, Barry Nussbaum. You see, what you have here, folks, is what the Bible commends, a righteous Gentile standing up for the Jewish people. And that's what we're commanded to do in Genesis chapter 12. And so if you understand what it is we're doing here, understand this. We're not paid to do this show. We put this show together and produce it at our expense and distribute it because we know where Barry stands on this vital issue. We know he has been there. He has family there. He is Jewish. And he has spent and continues to spend the time studying it. You know how many hours it has taken for him to read this plan and to make up a cohesive program that he's now presented to you? It takes a lot of time. And you're getting it because we together have partnered with him to do this. So again, thank you for supporting what we do here at WVW Broadcast Network so we can bring you these kind of programs. Thank you also for going to his website, AmericanTruthProject.org, as well as joining his text alert list by simply texting truth to texting truth to 88202. Again, just text truth to 88202. Barry, thank you for being with us. We look forward to our next visit together as we help people understand this vital issue, the center of the world, Israel.
Great to be with you, Brannon, and we so appreciate your support. You're an enlightened human that other people ought to be listening to. These are very important times for all of us to be informed so we can tell others the right course of action, especially in Washington.
Thank you, Barry. And folks, thank you for watching. Please share this with your family and friends, won't you? Till next time, I'm Brannon Howse for Barry Nussbaum. Take care.